This will be my reading of the poem of Consequence, Inconsequently by Richard Blanco. The poem has 7 stanzas. The last stanza only has 2 lines. The poem begins with a reference to his great-grandfather. It continues mentioning his great-grandmother on stanza number 2. And there is a description of a picture. In stanza number 4, what we have is the recognition that they are no longer alive. Stanza number 5, actually in stanza number 4, at the end, the last line begins a new way of approaching the situation. We have the poem wondering about what could have happened. Number 6 would be the results of what could have happened instead of what took place. And number 7, the last 2 lines, it's a moment of resolution and resolve as to what has to happen with his own life. That's in the abstract, because the poem is actually describing his own reality, his ancestry. And he's, as a Cuban American, trying to think about what is his ancestry. And that's why he's talking about his great-grandfather and his great-grandmother. Where did everything begin, at least as far as he can tell? Well, everything begins for him in Spain. His great-grandfather was a peasant, and he was a shepherd going from Asturias to Sevilla, to meet the love of his life. At least that's what the mother of the poet tells him by saying in stanza number 2, for love. And then we have the description of the beautiful description of the picture that I guess his mother gave him or showed him. So what is his ancestry? His ancestry is, in this regard, European. His family came from Spain. The first 2, right, the couple, came to Cuba, escaping from Spain. How do I know that? Because in stanza, say, number 4, we have a repetition of the phrase for love, and this time it's the poet himself saying, for love or war or both, they went to Cuba. But then you might wonder as a reader, why is he saying war in this case? And this has to do with what took place in Spain in 1936, when Francisco Franco took over and expelled many people who were fighting for what was called at the time La República, the Republic. And so those people who were facing against dictatorship, who did not want for a very conservative dictator to be put in place by fascists and even by the Nazis, they fought hard against the forces of Francisco Franco, who was a military man, but they were defeated. Many people from the States and Europe went to fight along with the Republicanos in Spain. So my assumption is that his great-grandfather fled from Spain because this war mentioned again in stanza number 4 was taking place. By the end of stanza 4, then we have this line, but what if they had never met? What color would my eyes be? Who would I be now? And so on and so forth, right? So that's a quick reflection on history, and that's the way I interpret it. There is no cause and result necessarily. Yes, things will take place, but they may go in several different random ways, depending on good fortune or poor fortune, what may happen to people in exile, people who have to flee a country because they are being persecuted, right? So that's what we have in stanza 6. What if my great grandparents did not go to Cuba? Well, they could have been, maybe, he's saying, yeah, right, to South Africa, Johannesburg. They could have been to Venezuela, Maracaibo. And what would have happened to me? What would have been this person that I am? What languages would I have been speaking, right? What countries would I have loved instead of Cuba or Spain in this case? What would the names have been that I would recognize, such as the names of my parents, my aunts, my cousins, everybody who surrounds me, right? Things would have been quite different for me. So in history, when people are immigrating, being thrown into exile, many things will happen. And one doesn't exactly know what is it exactly that the destiny and destination of those people will be or will be like. The last segment of the poem for me is a recognition that though randomness and random events take place, the poet says, in my view, I have to own up to that. I have to embrace the history of my family and what took place, and I have to make something out of that. So this line for me was important. The last line, having to finish it, is history, right? This story, history, and call it my own. But there was no clear line from here to there, right? And I have to embrace that too. That it was by chance that they came from Spain to Cuba. So this could be a self-reflection, right? It could be telling us, how is it that I'm here? How is it that I'm in Miami or in the United States? I could have ended up elsewhere. Yes, I was conceived in Cuba. Yes, my mom and my dad went to Spain and I was born in Spain. That's the case with Richard Blanco. And then we came to the States, right, to become who we are, Cuban Americans. The quick explanation for the title, at least let me say something about consequence. I thought that we had to take into consideration two meanings for that word. One is the result of something, and then the relevance of something. And for me, the poet is talking about the significance of his heritage, and then the result of all this going from place to place, the result who in the end, that is me, right? And inconsequently for me is simply the fact that many things will happen in history to those who emigrate by chance. And that's my interpretation.